Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. A lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's extraordinary live stream. This is an extraordinary story. But first off, a special shout out to lawyers from Weber Wenzel watching tonight, and enjoy the expose. And you guys can go and pog my horn, okay? Pog my horn, look it up. All right, the major horse race in South Africa is the July, held annually on the Greyville racetrack in Durban. For many years it was known as the Rothmans July. Our guest tonight, Richard Seed, is the son of the man who sponsored the July under the title of Rothmans for many years. Let's watch a bit of the history of the July horse race. Here we go.
The sixth three-year-old to win the July.
Ernie Duffield called the race for listeners at home, as Malaysia Pride returned in 1950 to romp home again, but this time his owner had sadly passed away. Sid Laird made the July his own when training a record 7 winners in the 60s and 70s. If one horse is remembered as epitomizing the quality of the best, it is Sid's own colt, Sea Cottage, who won 20 of his 24 starts. It was here at the Blue Lagoon on Durban beachfront that Sea Cottage was outrageously shot by a hired gunman when exercising for the 1966 July. The wound was clean, and 3 weeks later, he still ran, finishing a courageous fourth to stable companion Java Head. However,
all right,
it was the following...
that just gives you a bit of background to the July, and yeah, we'll be talking about that as well tonight. Now, back in the 1970s, I fondly recall sitting on the veranda of the Milner Gardens Hotel in Durban, eating lychees and watching the July live from our location high above the racetrack. I was just a teenager back then. Now, getting to tonight's subject, picture this situation. You go and buy a block of land, you pay it off, and a few years later, you get kicked off because someone has criminally transferred your land title into their name. Sound unbelievable? Well, not so much. This is what happened basically to the Seed family's home in Sandton, Johannesburg. In 1975, Richard's father bought a large property called Zandfontein Farm. It measured about 4,000 square meters. This is the very early days of Sandton. He had legal title to the property, but things came unstuck after his father passed away and the title deed was illegally transferred to a third party. In 2002, Richard and his late mother were evicted from their own property. Richard is fighting to regain title to his family's property, and one of the biggest hurdles is ABSA Bank. Now, this is how ABSA Bank portray themselves. Let's have a look at that.
Next time you're out there, on your own, ask yourself, what does that word, prosper, mean to you? From the day you come into the world, it's going to tell the story of your life, where you've come from, and where you're heading. It's an action word, like dance. Win, grow, care, hope, dream. So think about what that word prosper means to you, and we'll be there, standing beside you, shoulder to shoulder, knowing you can, believing you will prosper.
All right, don't you just love that? We'll be there standing beside you, shoulder to shoulder, so that you can prosper. Yeah, bah humbug. Oh well, now let me just find my Skype button. There we go. Now, okay. Tonight you will see a side of ABSA Bank that they do not want the public to know about. And that's why I said hello to Weber Wenzel, who sent me a nice little PDF a few weeks ago. Anyway, regardless, if you are having problems with ABSA Bank or any of the big banks in South Africa and would love to have your case put out there in the international arena, please just contact me at lovinglifetv.com and we will have a chat to you and see whether we can assist you in that regard. Let me get our guest Richard Seed on. Here we go.
Hey Scott, how are you doing?
Hi Richard, good thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And thank you for inviting me on the show this evening.
You're very, very welcome. Can you just turn your camera on?
Is my camera not on?
Not
Let's actually see what is happening. There we go. It should be on now. There we go. Hi everybody and welcome to Richard from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Perfect. Now Richard, I started this live stream with a little bit of the history of the Rothmans. And I can see behind you there's an article that says Durban, July's Seed. And
that's right.
Do you want to just take us through a little bit of the history of your family and the July and Rothmans? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. Well, hi everybody. I'm Richard from Johannesburg, South Africa, and thank you for watching this live show tonight of me claiming back my dad's property at 146 West Road North, Morningside, Sandton in Johannesburg, South Africa. My dad started, let's go back to the history of my father. My father was born in Malawi and he went to school in the UK. His parents went to move to the UK, and then my father went to high school, and then of course he went straight into the Royal Marines. Now he did his training, and then he became a captain in the Royal Marines in the UK, and then he served his time, and then he finished in the Royal Marines, and then headed off to South Africa to settle down and start a job. But before he did that, he actually started working for British American Tobacco in the UK, as it was one of the companies, Rothmans, that they were going to set up in South Africa. And then he came to South Africa in the late 50s to start, I think it was the late 50s, he started with Rothmans, and then started the Durban July horse racing first sponsor. He was the founder of the first sponsor, the Durban July, as known today, the Vodacom July. And my father was known for that, and I'm sure his legacy is going to stand out as of tonight going forward. And then, of course, he had a property. This is actually interesting. Investec Bank, where it is today in Sandton, that's where his first property was. That whole block where Investec Bank is, that's where his first property was. Then he sold it, and then he bought the property 146 West Road, North Morningside, on a portion of Sandton Farm of 4,000 squares in 1974, 75. It was just land. And then he built a house and then paid it off in 1979. And then, of course, my mother and my brother was there, and I was born in 1978. So that was my childhood home that I'm fighting for, that you have seen in the video. And that's what you're seeing in the background there. Who's that little baby there? Well, that's me. That's my father on the right-hand side, and the left-hand side is my mother. And as you can see in the top left is a little eulogy of my father that was printed in the newspaper. And then what you're seeing on the bottom right is the illegal subdivision, which I will be talking about tonight. Other than that, that's what I want back is my home. And then if I move out the picture, you will see that, guess what? SIU, Pretoria. They seized the property on the 13th of January 2023. 2 properties, in fact. And I'm pretty much respondent in that case as well as the applicant in my case, Scott.
Okay, let's wind back the clock a bit. Okay, so your father decided he was going to buy a property in Sandton. As you said, the original property is where Investec stands today. And he sold that and then bought this portion of Zandfontein Farm. I guess back then, Sandton was almost like a semi-rural area, wasn't it?
Yes, it was always farm back then. And then, of course, Sandton was the first richest shopping centre still today, as they call it, the Golden Mile in Sandton, that was built in the 70s. Yes, that's correct.
Right. Well, I remember seeing Sol Kurtzner, because he had an office in Sandton City, and I worked for Where magazine, and we used to go and pick up the front page ad, which would be some event happening at Sun City. And I often used to see Sol. And what surprised me about Sol Kurtzner, he stood about 5 foot tall. He's a short guy, absolutely short. And, very, very bossy. I remember, anyway, I'm not going to go there. Let's get back to the story here. So
I've actually met him as well when I was doing a production for KTV back in the day. I was actually looking at the reruns on YouTube, and I remember I was on the production, and we were in Sun City with one of the presenters, Kim Frickleton. And that was really awesome to meet Kirsten. I was actually quite young then still, and that was very nice to meet him in Sun City.
Yeah. Look, I just want to recognize someone in the side chat who's just come on board, and that's Johan Root, who's actually facing similar actions against ABSA Bank, and we actually covered his situation about a month ago. And it was just before we went live with Johan that we got a legal letter from Weber Wenzel, who represented ABSA Bank. But they have been very silent since we've been now spilling the beans about what ABSA have been up to, and we'll get to that soon. Okay, so your father buys this property in 1975. He's got the title deed, and your father. When did your father pass away?
My father passed away on the 13th of March, 1988.
Right, and that his inheritance went directly to your mother.
Correct. Yes, the property. Half the property went to my mother, and the other half was supposed to go into the Seed Family Trust, which didn't happen. It was only created in 2002 or 2001. But yeah, there's a whole lot of history down there, and a lot of dirty business with FNB, Barclays Bank back then, which I'm going to deal with in court.
Okay. Well, if there's stuff you can't talk about here, or you can talk about here,
I
please.
can talk about everything.
All right. Well, tell us that dirty business. What happened?
Well, Barclays Bank, DCO, as you know, were FNB fiduciary today. What I've learned today in court, this morning we were in court, is that Barclays Bank, all the states that were with Barclays Bank, which is now FNB back then, were all moved to ABSA after they took over Barclays Bank, which I thought is very interesting. So I wouldn't be surprised if ABSA Bank had a lot to do with their property back then with Investec Bank. And of course, FNB, there's a lot of dirty business there because what I've learned as well, Rothmans, BAT South Africa had some issues back in the 80s with FNB, and I think they targeted all the employees and the children and the families to steal their properties. I mean, this is rumors that I'm hearing, but I think it's really true because, I mean, why would FNB do something like this to my father? Because I think, maybe because he's in the Royal Marines, maybe came to South Africa for a reason and they think he was a spy, or they think otherwise. Who knows? Because he had a lot of money.
Right. Okay, so your father passes away, and you and your mother move onto the property, and you're living there?
No, me and my mother were on the property originally with my father.
Yeah.
Always. We were born as my child at home. Then the title deed of 1989 got transferred into my mother's title deed.
Right.
And then it wasn't done correctly with 50% share of the property into my mother's name and 50% in the seed family trust. So that should the property get sold, it would have to go to my brother's consent, which is Edward William Seed, that is still alive today, that will be in court, to state that, yes, we'll sell the property for way more than 5 million rand, not for 1.750 as the title deed. I mean, it was sold below market value of under 2 million rand in 2002. It's impossible because the property, Scott, is a consolidated property. It's more valuable than a normal property. And it's not only that, it's on a heritage overlay zone, and the land is historical land. You can't just do whatever you want to sell. And what I learned today as well in courts that the property was subdivided in 2001, 1975 was the first subdivision, 2001, 2003, 1980. What is it? It doesn't exist.
Now how can someone basically steal a title deed? How does that work? I mean, that's crazy. When you've got a title deed, I don't understand how this other party, which I believe is Andrew Investments, basically took possession of your property. How did they do that?
Well, the thing with Andrew Investments, it's a company name, and there's let's call it the umbrella. Brian Spaniel Marsden and Janine Spaniel Marsden were the next door neighbors at the time in 2001. But if you go a step backwards, my mother had insurance, or my father had BAT, British American Tobacco, had insurance with Alexandra Forbes. And Brian Spaniel Marsden was working for the company as whatever he was doing. And I think that is how it was tied in to the property. But no one knows how he got onto his property, which is at 144 West Road, North Morningside, next door, because his title deed is also defective. So no one knows how he even got his title deed, and no one knows how Andrew Investments even created, and no one knows how the title deed got transferred. But I actually had a meeting with Rian van Wyk and Susan Hunter in November 2022 from the Deeds Office. And not to burst your bubble, Deeds Office, I'm going to expose you now. It's been happening ever since. Fraud on the property, on various properties. The Deeds Office have no control with securing title deeds because they don't check title deeds. They just check to make sure your documents are there, but they don't check to see if the companies are legal or not, or the ID numbers. They say they do, but they don't. But Scott, what they do is they actually state on their website, please check your title deed with a conveyancer, an attorney, before you transfer or sell, because there happen to be fraud all the time, and it's been admitted from the Deeds Office. That's why they're currently closed, or half closed. Let's call it that way.
So what you're saying, if I've got a property, a registered property with a title deed in South Africa, I might actually be now sitting on someone else's land because they've actually transferred that title deed to themselves. And this
Correct,
is happening
yes.
widely in South Africa.
It is. That's why they've been trying to organize title deed insurance, and it's not working.
Wow, that is just crazy. So, all right, now how do the banks get involved in this? I mean, what is the role of the banks in this? You've got about 20 different respondents in the court action in the High Court. I'm just going to throw that up on the screen. Okay, so it says
by all
here,
means.
it says in the matter between Richard Seed, Edward Seed, and Andrew Investments, ABSA Group, and others. And then it's noticed a set down for Thursday, the 23rd of February at 10 a.m., etc., etc., and that's signed by Loans Glamini Incorporated, attorney for the 8th respondent, and to da-da-da. Okay, so take us through all these respondents. Why are you...
Yeah, I'm going to...
Yeah, go ahead.
No, what I could tell you is, okay, you only see part of the respondents there. I'm going to actually run through them off the top of my head because I know it backwards.
Right.
Edward is my brother, and of course myself is the applicants in the matter. Andrew Investments is Brian Spaniel Marsden. He has now deceased in 2019, so he won't be in court. It's learned now that his wife has also passed on, Janine, his ex-wife, been divorced. And then the second respondent is Yvonne Gladys Mafine and Leonel Naidu. Obviously, they were married. Not sure how they were married because you're supposed to have the same surname, but I think with their religions, it's different. And they purchased the property in 2003. And then 2004 is Slipknot, which is a company owned by Bernardus Ordendale. So Arjen Bernardus Ordendale and Lyndon Bay Ordendale. And then, of course, they transferred the property from Slipknot into their name. So they're the same people. Now they're the fourth respondent. Then they sold the property to the fifth respondent, which is All Park Properties, which is a guy named Paul Martin Steele. Apparently, he was invested on the property in 2021 in February the 28th due to his dirty business that he's been doing.
Now, Paul Martin Steele has got quite a reputation, hasn't he?
Yes, he does.
Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, sure. I only got to learn about it in January 2022 before his arrest because SIU and CPI and the Hawks spoke to me about, do I know this guy? I was under investigation for the last 13 years between that property, and I was helping them undercover as well. I don't know what for, but I had to feed them information because I knew about the fraud already at that stage, and it had to take a various amounts of time to get the property back, but they were looking for one specific person, and it was this guy. I don't know who this guy was until 2022. So what I've learned about this guy is that there's a lot of fraud that took place in Zambia and with the Chinese bank, and South Africa with SARS. They even called me into their head office last year in 2022. What is my involvement with All Park Properties and Paul Martin? I have nothing to do with this guy. I met the guy once when I served in the documents in 2021 in March. And then it just escalated from there. So it took about 20 years to get this whole property back. But 13 years he's been involved with the property. And then, of course, all the stuff that was happening underground of the property, underneath the house, basically. That's what the NPA told me a couple of months ago.
Okay, now that was on the neighbouring, well, it was part of the original block your dad owned, which was then subdivided illegally.
Correct, yes. So what you're seeing at the back, I was going to bring up the images, but I'd rather not in case I lose everything.
Yeah.
That image that you're seeing there, which is the overhead shot where it's in red, his house is the further one closest to the road. And that's that block that's highlighted in red is where all the stuff is happening underground.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, well, that's what the NPA tells me. So I have to see it myself. Look, I have been to the property. I think it was about the first time in 2021 when I did the video. Then I've been with the council, done a survey, general search of the property, what's illegal, what's not illegal. So all of that was done before the sixth respondent took ownership of the property. But then we learned to find out she's either deceased or missing or never been near the property. No one knows the story today. I was at the SIU head office on Friday for a meeting to discuss, have they found anything updated? They still need answers of the sixth respondent. But Paul Martin still is where he belongs. And I think, it's got nothing to do with me. It's got to do with him and God and what he's committed. And unfortunately, he's going to be a respondent in my application, which I'm not really looking forward to meeting this guy because of what his history that I've been seeing on the internet of what he's done and what I've been told from SIU and the NPA.
Yeah, no, he's a black fella, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, it's been in the media 2021, so I'm glad you
Yeah.
know about it, Scott, because it's all over. I haven't really looked into it since his arrest. I know 702's asked me for an interview. I know SABC's asked me for an interview back then. I just declined the media because the NPA and SIU told me not to speak to anybody at the media at this time because of the 2 respondents involved. But you know what? Today I can go to the media as of last week because the investigation's done for both cases. And it's just a question of getting this matter heard in court.
Now, just talking about people who have illegally occupied your land, one of those people is a Precious Mertzel from the National Lottery property scandal. How the heck did she land up in your family home?
That is what I would like to know. I have asked ABSA this question. I'm going to bring in who Lance Damini attorneys are. That is ABSA's attorneys that are representing them. And there's an advocate, Rob Skoggs. I've tried to ask him. I've tried to ask Alex Wright. I've even asked Weber Wenzels, your favorite attorney firm. They don't want to give answers to me. And not only that, there's another attorney firm. It's called RAM Attorneys that are in the same building as Weber Wenzel Attorneys that is representing the second respondent. So what I don't understand is no one actually knows how these people got the bonds, number one. They have to explain. If you have a look at this document behind me, okay, it's behind me. So you can see there's 22,500,000. Now, ABSA needs to provide each document of how the person applied the bond, if there's any offer to purchase or anything like that, which they must be FICA documents, especially FICA documents. If they can provide those documents and the repayments of the property, then we can find out if these people actually really owned the property. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no proof. ABSA and I, and we've both done heads of arguments. We've done motion of court application. I supplied a supplementary affidavit. That's what they're busy nailing me about next week in court, because they want to have that supplementary affidavit dismissed and my application as well, because they don't want to talk about the fraud. They don't want to actually admit. And they don't have the documents. I mean, Scott, if they do have the documents, surely they would have provided the documents by now for each respondent. And the sad thing is about Precious. What I see on her, I think it's on her, I think it's a LinkedIn page, that she was the National Lottery Commission lady executive, and that is how SIU got me into a corner. And they said, Mr. C, now what do you know about this woman? I said, I don't know her from a bar of soap. I've never met her. All I know, she's 50 years old, and she's either missing or she's deceased. Nobody actually knows right now. And no one actually knows how she even got the bond on the property. Only ABSA can explain that. So it will be interesting, Scott, next week, Thursday, in the Johannesburg High Court, around about 11 o'clock onwards. It will be interesting to see if they're going to provide the documents at court or before then. Now that the second respondent has filed an affidavit 84 days later, which is last week, Monday, I'm like thinking, do I respond to this affidavit or not? They're just going on what ABSA says. But I'm going to respond to the affidavit, and it's going to be used in court. But at the end of the day, this court case is going to be very exciting, because what SIU and the NPA want to know is how did the fraud actually come out 20 years later? Well, I'm sure, Scott, you know most cases these days always happen 20 years later, after the evidence of the investigation is complete. Then it's fired to go. But, then you get people like who are missing or deceased. I mean, like the property agent, Mr. Wayne Brownhill. I've been told he's now deceased. And he's got a lot of explaining, because he was the property agent ever since on that property. And he has a lot of explaining to do. But I suppose, he's gone now, so there's nothing I can do there. But that leaves the second respondent and the fifth respondent to explain what actually happened on that property.
Now, okay, Johan Reuters said, compel discovery on the banks. Now, you actually, we were talking a bit earlier, and you said that a lot of this stuff related to this court action you've brought against ABSA Bank has now mysteriously disappeared. Do you want to tell us what's going on there?
What is ABSA trying to do? They are trying to get my case dismissed for whatever reason. You know, Scott, what's actually quite sad about this whole application is that I filed this on the 22nd of April 2022 in the Johannesburg High Court. And a week later, I got served a final notice to be evicted from the property in Rivonia, which is my mother's property at 18A Homestead Road, Rivonia, Sandton, where we moved from 2002. And ABSA and FNB were behind it. There's no question about it, about this eviction. And that was done by Glover Canny-Appen Incorporation. And they are FNB's attorneys that forcefully evicted me on the day. Now, talking about that eviction, the police come in with crowbars, the sheriff comes in, reliable removers come with their trucks, and I'm going to sue all of them. And I have it all on CCTV footage. Well, the MPA's got it, or SIU's got it, in fact. All that footage of them breaking into the property, harassing me and stealing evidence. And yeah, I had a lot of evidence for my court case at the property, and a lot of stuff was put into storage. And what I don't understand is how can ABSA be told to dismiss this case? Why, by who? Why do they want to dismiss this case so badly? The fact is, Scott, FNB, this is now First Rand Bank, FNB fiduciary is part of the umbrella. They hadn't even bothered to oppose the affidavit. They haven't bothered to settle down this meeting and discuss this in detail. Not even ABSA. How does ABSA work? ABSA just works on email. They don't even want to talk on the phone. They don't want to have a meeting. So they're trying to. They've had court cases already. ABSA. I know this from the court. Judge Fisher is a good lady. She's a good judge. I know from a previous court case with the council back in the day with this property, and that's why she couldn't grant the order on the 29th of December, which I understand. It's not conflict of interest. It's just because this place is a mess. This case is a stuffer. So what is actually happening is ABSA just wants this case to disappear so it doesn't be heard. Now, Scott, if you steal a box of chocolates, okay, and you a person that is wealthy and you've got money and you've got properties and that, you are stealing. It's a theft. If you're a homeless person, it's a different thing. And this is what SIU told me the other day, that this is fraud. I'm the only witness that can explain the fraud on the property, except the second respondent and the fifth respondent, because they've got to explain what is actually going on there. At the end of the day, I just want my dad's property back, and I just don't want ABSA to dismiss this case or anything like that, because they shouldn't be allowed to do it in the first place.
No, I just want to get back to something you said at the very start of that last comment. And that was, you said that you were on another property, not this one that we're talking about. You were actually on another property, and ABSA Bank had you and your mother evicted from that other property. On what basis?
No. Not in that one. My mom passed away in 2013, so she passed away already, and I was living on the property alone with my partner.
All right.
And that was now recently. ABSA started with getting me evicted. Now, this is Strauss Daily Attorneys now in 2020, before I knew exactly what was really going on. So when I had a meeting with ABSA discussing what is the problem that you want to evict me again from 18A Homestead Road, Rivonia, because I know you're part of the one in 2002, but they say, no, we weren't, it was FNB. But I said, you Barclays Bank, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Bottom line is, what is the problem? So they spoke to me on the phone. They said that my mother purchased the property with a wrong ID number, which is the last digits that were changed. Now, let me explain about that. My mother was from the UK. She came to South Africa in 1976, and then she had an ID number ending in 103 as to show that she's a resident. And then she got married to my father, which still stayed as she was Annabelle Kathleen Mulligan. Then it changed to Seed. So the ID number would stay that until, I think it's 1986. Then it changed to 105. And then that changed again in 1992 to 087. So ABSA said the ID number is fraud. There's no money trace records. Fear Trump attorneys, the law firm closed down in the 90s. It's a one-man job, one-man person. And I believe he passed away in the late 80s, or the 90s. So anyway, the firm closed down. The title deed of 2002, the fake one on the internet, shows Fear Trump attorneys, the conveyancer, Morley Swat from STV attorneys, but she was working for Fiat Trump attorneys at the time. But her attorney, I think it's David, who's from the SDB attorney law firm, stated that she was only registered in 2005. So she couldn't be an admitted registrar person to stand in front of the registrar to have the title deed transferred. So all these little issues basically makes the title deed defunct. So ABSA legally can sue me for living on the property, but then I could sue them for stealing my father's property. So we're in a catch-22 situation here. So it's actually quite sad about title deeds, Scott. I'll actually go into it briefly. It's actually scary what I've learned from Rian van Wyk and Susan Hunter, the deeds office. I mean, they are so strict with the rules and things like that, and the public is not educated. And this is why I'm hoping my court case is actually going to educate like you and everyone that's got property. And because at the end of the day, the banks can just steal your property if there's anything wrong with your previous title deed. And the sad thing about that property of 18A Homestead Road, Rivonia, which is also my home, my second home, is that they took me to court, FNB, on the 6th of April 2022. The judge had me in court the magistrate had me in the Randburg court for about 6 hours, interrogating me and Lou Canyapan from Glover Canyapan Incorporation. And as far as I'm concerned, they must all go to jail. Because I was in court for 6 hours and they interrogated me on both properties of both court cases, and it was like, it wasn't even funny. And the order was granted on the same day to be evicted at the end of the month. I rejected it, and I said I'm going to appeal. So I appealed the case, and I still got evicted on the 4th of February. This was now 6th of April, and the 4th of May I got evicted. But Scott, this is the funny part. The application was served to me on the 8th of February 2022. I was in court 2 months later on the 6th of April. It is impossible. I've spoken to the registrar, and the judge even told me it's 6-8 months to get an eviction order, to even get into court. So how do you explain to get into court 2 months later? It's just not possible.
Well, Johan Rutt, he's discovered that a lot of these eviction orders and foreclosures don't actually even go through a court. They're fraud. That's what he has found. And he's here in the side chat, and he says our groups have Strauss daily on at least 8 other cases. So they're obviously very involved in this.
Yeah, they are. And the sad thing about that eviction court hearing on the 6th of April was that I was in court alone. I had attorneys on record, but they didn't even bother to come and assist me because they were in court. Advocate Douglas Shaw, he takes on the banks big time. He was in court that day, which I understand. Tahi Haseman was in court in another court that day, so I understand they couldn't be there. But my partner's sister, she's an advocate of the court. She could have maybe came to assist me in court, but she refused to help me. But it's okay. She's got issues with me at the moment. I mean, she was even there on the day of the eviction, and she allowed the eviction to even happen. And she's an advocate of the court. She could have stopped the eviction. But, let's go back to the court case. I was interrogated by the judge, and at the end of the day, he doesn't care what I say. And you know what they used to prove ownership of the property? They used a Lexus Windeed data report to say that Mrs. Nonuxel Ogeni, who owns 18A Homestead Road, I should be evicted. And not only that, I was on the property illegally for 20 years because of various issues and the fact that my name was not on the 2002 title deed, and the fact there was no proof of me ever having ownership of that property. So I do understand where the banks are coming from, but they must also understand, listen, you don't educate people. So maybe what should have happened was that if the title deed was legit and real in 2002, maybe my name should have been in the title deed at 50% and my mother could have 50%, so that when the state has to be wrapped up, it's very sad that my mother passed away, which I'll get into as well a little bit later. It's so sad that FNB fiduciary does the same thing, and they had the audacity to actually allow the eviction to continue and allow me to be evicted. I mean, that is just, what doesn't make sense here, Scott, is that how can a bank, FNB fiduciary, evict me off the property of the Rivonia property, and they were administrating my mother's estate? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I want to get my head around this. So you were evicted from your mother's property because her ID number didn't match up with what they had. That's the reason you were evicted. Nothing else.
With SARS, correct. Yes, with SARS. Because SARS said it was 087, that not 103 that was registered.
So that was the reason you were evicted, because her ID number had been changed when she got married, and of course that was different to the one on their record.
Yes, so what will happen is in 2002, when you buy a property, you would have to have 087, not 103.
Right.
And of course, the offer to purchase documents and the transaction of, I think it was 1.1 million, the property was paid for, could not be found. Your offer to purchase is there, it's hidden. It's just that they say it's missing after 5 years, but people do keep backups. But the problem is the law firm closed down in the 90s. So the question is, ABSA Bank has to explain who is fiat Trump attorneys. FNB's never heard of them. ABSA has heard of them because they used fiat Trump attorneys back in those days. But according to the deeds office, they did a thorough search. I think it was in the late 90s, the last title deed transferred of fiat Trump attorneys. And then it just happened to be the only one in 2002. And I don't think they found any title deeds since with fiat Trump attorney's name on it. So that's also another reason why ABSA have this. Look, it's going to be proven in court, hopefully. I believe they've won the appeal case without me being in court. But it will be challenged, I think, when my case gets underway next week. It is underway at the High Court at the moment, but on the National Lottery Commission side and as well as the council side. And then I think next week, Thursday, is when my case officially starts for 2023 in trial.
Okay, now look, I just want to go through the process of a loan, a bank issuing a loan on a property. Because how fiat money works is that there's no asset actually backing the cash that we use. It's all debt. Now, for them to generate a loan on a property like the property that was taken away from you at your father's property, I'm now talking about that 4,000 square meter property, the bank has got to literally create that loan out of nowhere. But they've got to make 100% sure that what they're actually loaning the money against is the property of the person they're loaning the money to. So before they issue a bond or they guarantee a loan, they've got to make 100% sure that that title deed that is registered or put in their security or their control is a valid title deed. Now there's something missing there, because that title, the original title deed on that property that your father had, was not just stolen from your family, but it was then broken up into other titles. How could the bank not see that there was something wrong there?
Okay, what should have happened? So let's go back to 1975. My dad's title deed's been proven in courts by Judge Fisher and the various other judges involved in the two different cases, the National Lottery case and my case as well, with the 6 respondents. So it shows my dad's title deed's the only legal title deed. So what has actually happened is that my dad paid off the bond in 1978-79. I think that was done by the Building Society Bank back then, so it had nothing to do with any of the banks. So what happened was then 1989 title deed transfer was done. So what happened there? So there's no necessary fault between the two title deeds, because either way I'll get the property back, even if it goes back to my mother's title deed or my father's. But what should have happened is, in the 1989 title deed, is that 50% should be in the trust and 50% should be my mother. Now, if we go to 2002 title deed, this is now under investments. What should be the first thing the bank should check when you apply for a loan? You should actually go to the bank and say, hello, bank, I would like to purchase a property. Let's say I want to purchase 146 West Road, North Morningside. So if Andre Investments were a real company, if they are, I've actually spoken to the landlord here in Brooklyn, and he said he's never heard of Andre Investments, Andre Investments Ltd, And they have the same court case against them as well, because a lot of people are going to their premises and asking for underinvestments, so they don't exist. So let's now get to Brian Spaniel Marsden. So let's say he's underinvestments, which he is a director. Now, I just want to clear this, Scott, so I'm going to get into it just now. But anyway, so he would have gone to the bank. He would have said, bank, please, I would like to get a loan of, let's say, 5 million, 7 million, 10 million, whatever it is. The offer would have been at least more than 10 million in total for townhouses. But let's say for a normal property owner, at least 5 million rand. So he would have asked the bank, could I have 5 million rand to buy the property 146 West Road North, Morningside? The bank will say to Brian, I can't just give you that money. I need you to do an offer to purchase, and I need you to provide your FICA documents of the company. So that, I could tell you, was not done, because if it was done today, those documents would have been given to me or to the National Lottery Commission, which is SIU, or anybody to say the company is legit. CRPC said in Pretoria the company doesn't exist. Now, the question is, my mother never gave an offer to purchase to Brian. My mother would not accept Brian's bribes, because that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to intimidate my mother and myself. We had a massive fight in May 2002 where I almost got arrested. I went to the police station and he laid charges against me because I actually smacked this guy silly. Because he smacked my mother and he had a firearm. I mean, that is just not on. And it got a bit ugly because a couple of drinks, he got to know my mother quite regularly since 2001, having next door neighbors. My mother invited him over for lunch and things like that with his wife. And there was nothing wrong there until May 2002. But it started in 2001 when he wanted to buy the property. And my mother didn't allow him. So if we get back to the bond story, you have to provide your FICA documents, your offer to purchase, your IDs. And not only that, it's because it's a consolidated property, Scott, you have to provide an affidavit of why you want to buy the property. Now, my mother and my brother and I knew that Brian Spaniel Marsden, Under Investments, wanted to buy the property to build townhouses. And he gave an offer to my mother for 10 million rand, 8 million rand. And it's like very difficult to believe in 2001. So did some research, my brother did, and it was not possible to even allow it to happen because A, it's going to cost you maybe 3 or 4 million rand to even get it done. I mean, number two, it's a consolidated property. Number three, it's on a heritage overlay zone. Number four, it's historical land. The council would never allow it. So we didn't even bother going with the application because it's not worth it. And Brian left it a bit, and then he was just harassing and harassing and harassing. And somehow he managed to get the bank involved to try and pull some strings. And that's how the transfer happened. I mean, if my mother really signed the power of attorney, as there's a document that was given to me yesterday or today in court, that is this my mother's signature. It's a copy. It's not really my mother's signature. It's slightly different, but you know what, Scott? It's so easy to copy signatures today. And why would my mother do it below market value? Because the market value back then was about, I think, 4.5 for 4,000 squares from the municipality. So there's a lot of issues. But getting to your question about how do people get these bonds, that is between the bank. It's an inside job.
Wow. Now, you said, I think, earlier that the document that purports to have your mother's signature on says only 1.75 million rand.
Correct.
Okay, and you're saying that it's actually its value was 4.5 million rand. So,
at least, yes.
So clearly there's something wrong with that. Okay, that's a no-brainer. Did she ever receive any money from Andrew Investment? So
nothing, not a cent.
So
you'll talk about the fiat money. Let's go for the fiat money. I mean, at the end of the day, the banks, they don't own the money. The money is done by these private individuals. Like, for example, the Rivonia property. Nonokson Ogeni, who's now owning the property, she's no longer at the property anymore. It's someone else. She got her loan from SB Guarantee. So how these banks work, and I agree with Jan on this, that the banks don't own money. They get individual companies to get the loans for them. And they have to promise for the money, but let's say the money's not there. What happens then? Oh, sorry, take us to court. We don't care.
So where did that 1.75 million rand go to? Who got it?
No one knows. No
But
one
the
knows. It
banks
doesn't
must
exist.
know. Look,
That is what I'm wanting. That's what I'm wanting from ABSA and FNB. Whoever's in charge of Barclays Bank, it doesn't matter who did what. It doesn't matter. Between ABSA and FNB, they must find that trail record of where that money came from, so that we could get the private investigators involved. I'm dealing with the top investigators in South Africa, and they don't take any shit from anybody, and they want to see that money trail so they can investigate and do an audit to see if that money even existed, for number one. Number two, where did it go? Because how it should actually work is that you get your loan from the bank gets a conveyancer involved, gets an attorney involved, then they appoint the attorneys involved to actually do the transfer of the property. But before that, you've got to provide your offer to purchase, you've got to provide your FICA documents, you've got to provide your conveyancer that you're going to go and use, you've got to do like an Andrew investment point of view, they have to be vetted by the bank to see if they can even get a loan for the company. The company can get a loan for the property, which it was unlikely because they were only registered in 2001 and they were shut down in 2002. So that just tells you there's a problem there. So they wouldn't have got the money in the first place. So what would have happened is the bond would have been granted if there was a bond, but they say it was a cash payment. Either way, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, where's the money trail?
Yeah.
Let the bank show the money trail, show the proof it was sold for 1.750. And then they're going to say, okay, here's the proof. Now you're happy. Now you can move on. No, you can't move on. It's way below market value. Where's the affidavit in the title deed? Because the deeds office has confirmed there's no affidavit for Andrew Investments to say why is buying the property and my mother to give consent. And not only that, the council also has to put their signature on the affidavit. So that wasn't given. And the fact is that SARS has confirmed that Andrew Investments is owing a lot of money and they're not a legal company. And Brian Svanya-Marsden only worked for the company for 1 day, as on the CIP search report. If you go through the documents that I sent you, the motion of court application, Scott, when you've got time, and then you can bring this up in a future show, you will see it's highlighted that he only worked for the company on the 31st of September 2002 for 1 day.
And that's the day that this all happened.
Pretty much when I was evicted. My mother was evicted on the 10th of June, and then she went overseas that week. And pretty much I was evicted during that time of September 2002.
Yeah, now, Richard, how can a bank lend money to a company that's not a legal entity? I mean, SARS has said Andrew Investments are not a legal company. How can ABSA or FNB loan them money if they're not a legal company? Because the banks would know that.
That's the thing, and this is what I'm hoping they're going to bring this up in court. If not this week, next week. I'm hoping the prosecutor's actually going to ask Mr. Pretorius or Mr. Rob Skalkwyk, the advocate of ABSA Bank, does a bank grant a loan application if they don't vet the company? Because as far as I'm concerned, the banks don't actually vet the companies. They just give loans left, right, and center. They say they do. Well, I would like them to present that demonstration of how they vetted Andrew Investments to actually give a loan of whatever it was, but of 1.750, even though the banks say it was cash sale. Well, then they must provide the cash sale. FNB must show the transaction of Theo Trump attorneys, if they really exist today or 2002, to show the trace of 1.7 million. If ABSA can provide that, or FNB, whoever can provide that, then at least we can get that off the list, and then we can start going through, because there's a big cake. The cake is massive, and we can go through each little piece of the cake until we get to the end, and then obviously the court will make the decision of what's going to happen going forward. There's no doubt in the court's mind they're not going to give me the property, but now I have to suffer to get the property after everyone is heard. So it's fine. I've agreed with the courts. I said it's fine. I'll wait. But I actually don't think it's fair. It's against my constitutional right. But Scott, your guess is as good as mine. How did they actually do it without checking the documents? Because if they did do their homework in 2002, they would have said, sorry, Andrew Investments, sorry, Mr. Brian Marsden, I'm not going to give you the property money for that. You would have to register your company, or you have to go whatever it is. That's what should have happened. But the thing is, it's so sad of what actually happened now over the years. I mean, I am so strong about it. I mean, I've had my breakdowns, I've cried, I've gone past that stage now, because now I'm going to be putting people in jail after this, because at the end of the day, it's not about putting people in jail. It's about justice, and it's about what is this country about? Is South Africa going to change with corruption or not? Because at the end of the day, we have to resolve this matter of what happened on their property, because it's actually a risk in Sandton, Scott, because there is security guards on the property. They're armed, and the police are scared to go near that property because of Paul Martin Steele's property and whatever's been happening over the years, because the truth has now come out. And at the end of the day, I've had so many threats. I've had guns at my head. I've had so many threats from RJ Bernardus Ordendale, Brian Spaniel Marsden back in the day. I'm glad Yvonne and Mr. Naidu has never threatened me. I mean, look, I'm actually surprised when I went to court today. They only heard about the fraud in 2021, actually now in 2023, I mean, for the first time, and it's not true. So there's a lot of issues. So, Scott, at the end of the day, once the truth comes out from these banks and they can actually show the track record of that 1750, then we can start seeing all the other transactions and bonds to see if they're real or not. Because 22.5 million is a lot of money. I mean, apart from the 300 million that SARS seized from Mr. Seal, I mean, that was on a different case altogether. I mean, some of it happened on my father's property. Obviously, some of it happened abroad. No one actually knows. And yeah, I could actually agree with you. This fiat money and this mining rigs and Bitcoin, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a whole system underground linking to the Chinese bank. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Issa, you said to me, Mr. Siege, you've now spoken about it. At the end of the day, they can't stop me because this is facts. It's in the websites. I mean, whatever I'm saying tonight is facts. It's all on paper.
Yeah.
And the fact is the banks need to provide those 6 respondents bond papers of how they purchased that property. Once that is done, then we talk about the legal subdivision. Then we talk about the estate. Because there's just so much. I mean, at the end of the day, I think they could.
You know what's frightening to me? If I was watching this live stream now and I had a property in South Africa, I would be tomorrow going to the titles office to check to see if it's still in my name. Because
I encourage you to do that.
What appears to be happening now is that lawyers who are, I mean, look, you've got corrupt lawyers, just like you've got corrupt anything else. They're going in and they're actually transferring titles from one person to another, probably another holding company, and just sitting on it very quietly. And then when they think that the time's right, they then go and evict the legal owner of the property because they claim to have title.
Correct. And that's what happened to me on the Rivonia property on the 6th of April. I was in court 2022 and then evicted on the 4th of May because she's got title. Look, I knew about this transaction transfers and I told Mrs. Nagini, you know what, you know about the fraud on the property. Why are you insisting to continue buying the property? Because I actually got into a corner to be part of the setup operation. Carte Blanche were also getting some evidence for that. I've given them a lot of evidence of what happened on that eviction, and it's actually quite frightening what the producers told me. I think it was last week. And it's shocking. The evidence, what they saw on the footage of the eviction with the police involved, that is just unforgivable. But never mind about that. The intimidation of what happened in court. At the end of the day, she's got the property. Now she's no longer there because they're going to knock the property down for development. But the sad thing is, how do they actually get away with these banks? They just transfer properties without you knowing. So getting to your question about title deeds, yes, it's very important that everybody who's watching this tonight, I encourage you tonight, start doing it tonight. Get your title deed out. Go through every single title deed, and if you're not sure, please go onto my Facebook page, or Scott will put a link there to it, and send me an inbox message, and then I will help you of what you need of supporting documents depending on what property it is, because I've learned so much about title deeds. And then you go to the deeds office and you ask the deeds office, please stamp my title deed. I don't care if they say no, you get it stamped, because if your title deed's not stamped, you can lose your property just like that.
Wow. You know,
Yeah, not only that, if your supporting documents are not legal, you can lose your property just as this. You could just lose it like that, and there's nothing you could do about it, even if it happens 20 years later. So let's say you bought a property 20 years ago, and you're seeing your title deed today, and you see there's no deeds office stamp on it. That's a big problem. Red flag. Go and get it stamped. Number 2, check that your SARS document's legal. Check that if you have a consolidated property, you have an affidavit. Check that you have a SARS clearance certificate. Make sure that you have those documents in place, because if you don't, you can still lose your property if you have a bond. Look, it's actually quite scary what's happening now, Scott. I mean, the stories that I heard from Rian van Wyk and Susan Hunter, it's actually quite shocking in the deeds office of Pretoria.
Wow. Okay, well, look, Susan Friedman says, my property was stolen when Strauss Daly were the conveyors. So their name seems to be coming up quite a lot.
ABSA's attorneys, yeah. And FNB.
Okay, and Johan says, check the liquidator's trust accounts. I guess that's something you're going to be doing.
Trust, yeah, that's something that I'm actually learning about trust now, and that's where Advocate Douglas Shaw comes in. He's waiting to see how this is going to pan out, because my dad's trust was supposed to be set up in 1989 called the Seed Family Trust. And what should have actually happened, technically, the whole property should have gone into the trust, which I think normally happens,
yeah.
And then a 50% share goes into my mother's name. It doesn't mean it goes out, it's just a document. So when 2002 comes, or whenever my mother wants to sell, they're going to say, okay, no, you can't just sell 4,000 squares, Mr. Seed. You're going to have to speak to your stepson, which is my brother, because my father was married before my mother, because his previous wife was Belinda Ann Seed. So that's where Edward comes from. And he has surety on that property as the main trustee to sign. So he would have had to, my mom would have had to ask my brother's permission to sell the property in the first place. And that never happened. Look, it was discussed, but townhouses, we looked into it, 8 million rand, no, it was never going to happen, because why would we want to sell it anyway? Because, of course, we just want to do some research, because my father left the property to me. I remember, if you have a look at the video, I was standing under a tree by the pool when I was 9 years old. And my father said to me, this is your land. Never, ever let your mother sell the property. Because my father was a clever man. I mean, even though he had a lot of shares from British American Tobacco from when he started working for the company as sales director, I mean, we're talking about maybe estimation 40 million rands worth of shares today. I might be wrong, but all of that's been taken. But the sad thing is, I would have never allow my mother to sell that property ever. My brother would never, because my dad made it very clear. And my brothers, we were 4 in the family, 4 children. They were all educated. They all went to Marriott Brothers. They all went to university. I didn't. And the only thing that I would have had is the property of 4,000 squares to do whatever I want with it until I'm ready to sell, or my brother could say, okay, we're going to subdivide the property when it's legal, and we're going to build a house, and we're going to rent it out until the time is right. Then we'll sell the property, and then we'll put it in memory of my father. We'll call it the Seed Estates or something, just to emphasize my dad's legacy. I think that would be something like a townhouse complex, something to do with the Seed family. That's what we would have done eventually. And I'm still going to do that, obviously, when I'm 70 years old. Hopefully, I'm still living at the property then and not being stolen again, and then get it developed and have something to do with the Seed family. So that's what I would like to do. But Scott, you know, this case of mine, it's a sad story. I mean, there is so many questions that I'm sure you've got in your head that you want to go talk to me about, and I'm quite happy to talk about anything you would like to know.
All right, look, there's one, the elephant in the room for everybody is the simple fact that this is a historic property, and it's illegal to subdivide it in any way. So 2023, still today, I was talking to Hector, the legal department, this morning, and he said to me, as far as he's concerned, just that block of the 4 houses that's still remaining, there's actually more, there's about 7 or 8 houses, just that section alone cannot be subdivided until, they are busy doing it slowly, but not on a historic property. That cannot happen for maybe another 10 years or so. So all these subdivisions are illegal. So everybody who's got a house on that original block of land, they're going to have to leave because
eventually, if the council, look, if this case proceeds in court, there's no doubts that this is going to happen, or there will be laxation laws. I don't know what's going to happen, and this is why the banks, that is the main reason why the banks want this to be thrown out of court,
I can
because
understand.
of that one problem. I can imagine that, because I don't know about all the other properties for the rules and such, but far as I know, if it's on an overlay zone, Morningside is on a heritage overlay zone and outspan, I'm sure there's way big rules, but I think, they have gazetted it. But, if you go back to the laws of 2002, what was the laws then? Were you allowed to subdivide there? Yes or no? No. Look at portion 0 of my father's property. That's where Brian used to live. He's gone. I'm glad he's dead. I don't really care. The bottom line is, how did he get on the property? His property is still 4,000 squares today. So you look at the sky photo. In fact, if you have a look at,
we can see it just over your right shoulder.
You can see it there. Let's go look at it overhead shots. You go onto my Facebook page. For those who are watching this live stream, you'll see the whole history of look at all the houses. You'll see some of them are still 4,000 squares, some of them are subdivided, which is okay, I suppose, but not on that block. If you look at that block, they're all 4,000 square. There's some houses at the bottom of the garden where the farm used to be, Sandton, or the whole lot. They have been subdivided into a cul-de-sac because they're allowed to do so. It's like a sectional title thing, which they've now done. So just my dad's probably a portion 0. I think Hector said this morning, or it was... one of the other people at legal this morning said that I think it's another 5 years or so, then it will be legal to actually knock down portion 0, portion 1 and 2. Portion 2 doesn't exist. So portion 2 will go back to portion 1 of 4,000 squares legally once this whole case is over. And then obviously the house should have been knocked down already, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because of the illegal people that's on the property next door. And as far as I know, my dad's property is empty, and it's actually quite shocking that I can't go there in the meantime because I'm destitute. I don't even have a home to go to. Where I'm currently now renting. My partner's renting, and I'm stressing because, I used to have a production studio in my Rivonia property where I was earning an income each month, where I did live streaming and things like that with a surfing show called Surf Talk Live News. And we were going live that afternoon when I got evicted that morning. And it was shocking for my client. It actually lost my contract with World Surf League to actually get into the World Surfing Tour of 2003. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of issues. But Scott, what the sad thing is? We're talking about 2 properties here in the space of 20 years. The banks had it all planned out. Because that's how they target you. They destroy you. They think they can get away with it. But you know what? I've got the big man upstairs, and God said to me, you nail them. And that's what I'm busy doing. And I'm hoping after tonight, I'm going to have a big support behind me because, Scott, I can talk about this all week, all night, because it's so sad. What I had to go through the last 20 years.
Richard, when is where can you give people's date, time, location of your High Court cases they want to go and watch?
Yes. The one that I would like the public to come to, the ones that are happy now are closed. They're online. Next week, Thursday, the 23rd of February in the Johannesburg High Court, anytime from 11 onwards. It will be confirmed that morning. It has been set down by Lowndes Domini attorneys. That's now ABSA's attorneys, because what they want to do that day on the 23rd of February is to amend the application and dismiss the application and so on. But what is actually going to happen on that day is the court is going to hear the case from start to end. There's no ways ABSA is going to get that right, and it's going to continue for hopefully 5 days on that day. The other cases this week is all online now. That's just explaining of how I fit in with Mr. Paul Martin Steele and the 6th respondent with the National Lottery. Well, at the end of the day, I'm just claiming back my father's property. I had no idea. And strangely enough, the actress popped in today in court. It came up. Wasn't she dating Mr. Steele at some point? And then I didn't even know about it, but then I spoke to my partner and she said she found an article. So that explains the Mercedes, the red Merc that was in the driveway last year that I saw, that got repossessed and taken by SIU. So it all ties in that this actress that was we talking about from SIU was also involved with the property, and there was another property in Bryanston and all of these things. So at the end of the day, my role in that case, actually, I don't know what it is all at this point, but all I know that I'm the first respondent, far as the sixth respondent is concerned. So it's actually quite interesting. I mean, what I learned this morning is that the illegal subdivision is a big concern of how even Paul Martin still even got to obtain that property. I mean, first of all, he paid 7 million rand cash for 1979 squares. It's not even 2,000 squares, and that's cash. You might go to Clifton in Cape Town, and then you could argue that.
Yeah.
But not in Morningside.
Yeah. Who's the actress, just as a matter of interest?
I can't remember her name, but it came in this morning. Have I ever met her? I think she was in the house when I served the documents on Paul Martin Steele in 2021, or I could be wrong. Certainly Wayne Brownhill at the property at the time. And talking about Mr. Wayne Brownhill, he was the property agent. He was from Sotheby's in 2002 and Pam Golding, obviously, over the years. He worked for Pam Golding Properties. This is what actually happened. I mean, how did the second respondent know about this property? She knew about it in 2017 through Just Properties. But obviously they didn't inform her, or they did. But I told them not to let her know that I'm actually after the property, because I'm not laying charges or criminal charges against her, because maybe she got scammed in this whole thing by underinvestments. So 2020, after COVID, Sotheby's International got to market the property, and I was watching all of this behind the scenes and feeding the information to the police and SIU. And I had to keep a low profile because of Mr. Steele on the other property, because they didn't know at that stage if he was the man that they were looking for. No one knew. I didn't even know that until now in 2022. So I just carried on and I just waited. So Wayne Brownhill was the agent in 2020 to sell the property of 146 West Road, North Morningside, Sandton, on behalf of Ms. Mafine and Mr. Naidu. And then what happened was that they didn't sell the property in 2020. Then the mandates expired. Wayne Brownhill and Jonathan McCarthy, his partner, took the property and went to Pam Golding Properties to market it now in 2021. That was 2 years ago, for a whole year. And then they sold the property, and then Wayne Brownhill got fired. So I was told from a lady named Nikki from Pam Golding Properties. And of course, he went to he went to, I think, First or whatever properties. Yeah. And then I heard that he committed suicide just recently. So it's actually quite sad. But I told him, Wayne, be open and honest, because you are going to come to court. Tell Ms. Mafine not to market the property, not carry on. We got a mandate. I said, tell her the truth, because at the end of the day, she's also going to look. I wouldn't be surprised if she was also a victim. I was told she was informed in 2005 about this. Look, she was in court, I think 2008, for her divorce and stuff, and the property did come up and so on. I mean, I was involved with that.
I'll tell you what, Richard. This is a complete and utter remorse. It's a complete and utter mess, because I can see how complicated it is. And this is what happens when you get corrupt lawyers. I don't know who the corrupt lawyers are, but you've got corrupt lawyers obviously involved facilitating an illegal transfer of title deeds, which are then given to ABSA and FNB Bank, who then give out loans which in themselves are fraud, because the people they gave the loans to have no rights to the property in the first place. So you've got, and this has just got more and more complicated as time goes by, because you've got someone who buys the property and then sells it to someone else. So all those people are going to lose. If you win this case, they're all going to lose their investments in that land, and they will then have a case to sue the banks.
That's what I want. And this is what I said to Yvonne Mafine's attorney, the second respondent. You know, at the end of the day, she needs to sue FNB Home Loans, because that's where she got her loan, or her ex-husband. But that is another interesting thing because Mr. Naidu will also have to explain how did he get the bond in the first place? Did he provide his FICA documents? This is what I'm busy replying in my affidavit now to Ms. Maffin. I would like to know, how did you purchase the property in 2002 from Andre Investments? And I'm hoping one of her friends are watching and send this video to her. I would like to know, where's the offer to purchase? Who is Andre Investments? Of course, it's Brian Spaniel Marsden. I would like to know, but what I understand from an attorney that they've never met. They just somehow, no one can explain how it happened. That's excuse. That is an excuse. So at the end of that, I want to know that. So when I do file the affidavit this week, I'm going to ask a simple question. Provide your offer to purchase, your FICA documents, your reason why you wanted to buy the property in 2002, who is Brian Spaniel Marsden to you, and who is Andre Investments. I want to know all these things, and I want to know the history, I believe, from Wayne Brownhill. Wayne Brownhill told me a lot about what was happening on that property before his passing. That was now 2021. What I understand, I mean, we had conversations on the phone when he found out that I was busy investigating him and I was part of the investigation. But look, he was open and honest, and I actually thank him for talking to me. But he wasn't there when I wanted to confront him when I did the video of the property, because I actually wanted to say to Wayne, you know, at the end of the day, why do you keep quiet when you know that each property owner is going to suffer in court?
Yeah.
Because that is correct. At the end of the day, Yvonne's going to suffer. At the end of the day, she's not going to suffer if she plays her cards right. She must say that she was frauded by Andre Investments, Brian Spaniel Marsden. If she says that, then at the end of the day, she knows she can sue the bank. But at the end of the day, I don't know how she's going to play her cards, because I know the truth, what happened. And the thing is, it's not for me to say what happened, because at the end of the day, she has to explain it. She has to have the right, an opportunity. And if her husband and her are still together, then they can come to court and explain. If not, it's fine. She must just explain how she got the property and why did she sell the property in 2021 to the 6th respondent, which is Precious, that's linked to the National Lottery Commission. Because at the end of the day, she wouldn't know this information, but she just, because she was...
you know what it sounds like to me? Several of the people who became owners of your original property sound like they're very, very sus people. I mean, you got that Paul Martin Steele. You got Precious Metrizil from the National Lottery. These guys are not your normal sort of buyers. These are people who are like a mafia. They're criminals. And Paul Martin Steele is behind bars for 10 years for what he did. So, you know, we're not dealing with normal, you know, people who meet on the street.
I was actually quite shocked when I found this out. I didn't even know this until I looked in the document. I see this this Windy, what do you call it? I think it's LinkedIn page. And then I spoke to SIU about it, and they said, well, yes, and this is why you linked as a respondent. And I thought, oh, and ABSA could have not. I mean, what ABSA lied. I mean, if they can prove it in court, she's not the National Lottery Commission. Wouldn't they come to me now and say, Mr. Seed, you are actually lying in your affidavit. You actually, this is the woman. She must come and see me, talk. She hasn't even bothered phoning me. I mean, at the end of the day, it's been in the media now for the last couple of months. Paul Martin still, okay, he's in jail, but it's fine. Precious, if she was really living at the property, surely by now she would have come to me and say, Mr. Seed, I see you trying to take my house away from me. Is there something that I did wrong? Did I buy a stolen property? Can I go and sue ABSA? Then I will have this conversation with her and I say, yes, go and sue them. Get your money back. Ms. Maffin, at the end of the day, I don't know what the deal is. If she really got 4.8 million, if she has to give it back to ABSA, well, then she knows she has to go and sue FNB. And then I'm sure she knows, and this is why I'm hoping she watches and her friends are watching, that I will help Mrs. Maffin to go to FNB Home Loans and say, I want to sue them. I want to get my money because I was also a victim. Because I have no issue.
Yeah, they're an innocent party. I get that. Now,
I'm sure they are an innocent party. Yeah. I don't think they were part of this the scam that's going on. Look, I think they are an innocent party. I haven't had a phone call from Miss Maffin. I've tried to phone her. I've sent her WhatsApp messages and no response. Yeah. Because I would like to actually have a coffee with her. She's in her 60s now, and say to, look, Mrs. Fien, this is what's happened. I did a video on my YouTube channel explaining the whole fraud, and I'm surprised she hasn't even seen that yet 2 years ago. Because at the end of the day, I just want justice to be done. I just want my family home back. And I'm sure she would have sympathy for me and a decency to say, okay, I'll support you, Richard, in this fight, but you help me sue ABSA, FNB at the end of the day, and I'll do it by all means, because I don't think in my heart, I don't feel in my heart that she was, I feel she's a victim, but I'm sure when she comes and testifies in court next week, Thursday, I think her attorney will be there and her as well, I'm not sure. It would be nice to hear those stories, and then I'm hoping she would actually crack down in court and say, I want to go against ABSA and support Richard in this fight, so she can also get justice at the end of the day.
Okay, now look, I'm going to wrap up this live stream shortly, but before I do, I guess what we've been talking about here is basically a situation that destroys the suggestion that something as safe as houses, because that can be taken from you by criminals. It's quite disgraceful. Now, do you have a message for the lawyers who are representing ABSA Bank? Just something, regarding.
I do. I just wish Alex Wright and Annan Launders, the company, and Greg Launders, and all the staff at at Launders, Lansdowne Mini attorneys, could actually say to me, Mr. Seed, we've realized you're on Loving Life. We realize you're going to the media. Can we actually just sit around the table? Okay, we can't do that now because I'm under strict orders. I may not go anywhere. I may talk to them on camera, on Zoom. I may do that. And let's talk about this matter so that when we go into court, we can actually be on the same page, and and ABSA can actually, this is what I would like to have ABSA do. If they can go and tell their client ABSA, we've made a big mistake. Let's settle out of court and let's admit the truth and let's go to court. Because you know what's going to happen? If they carry on like this, they are going to get arrested. There's no doubt. Alex Wright, and they're all going to go to jail. I was told this by SIU on Friday. If they don't admit the truth and provide the documents, every law firm that's involved is going to go to jail. There's no question about it. All fined or whatever, because at the end of the day, I've sacrificed 20 years of pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'm doing this in memory of my parents. And for FNB's attorneys, Glover Canary Incorporated, same thing. Admit the truth. I want those respondents that was involved, all the attorney firms that are involved. I know who you are. I'm speaking to one of the attorneys that was involved with the other transfer of 2013, and he's a nice man, and at the end of the day, he's given me some advice and so on. And at the end of the day, it's not about putting people in jail. It's not about justice. It's about solving a problem. This is how South Africa can be resolved. If everybody can just admit they've done wrong, then it's all okay. I'm sure the judges are not just going to lock you up because you've admitted it. I mean, at the end of the day, I think, the courts also struggle for the banks to admit it. But at the end of the day, everybody's backing up everybody. So I just would like all the attorneys and the respondents that could be found in this application to admit the truth as of next week, Thursday. Because if they admit the truth, Scott, I'm telling you, it will actually make this case so much easier for the public to follow, so that everybody's admitting the truth. Because at the end of the day, you're going to go to heaven and you're going to say to God, I admitted the truth and I actually did something good. They will remember this. But the problem is the attorneys don't want to talk to me. They don't want to pick up the phone. And I struggle to get Alex Wright and Weber Wenzel and Ram attorneys to actually speak to me on the phone. They won't. They just want to write on email because they want to use that in court against me. That's fine.
You know what the problem is there? The problem is that all the big legal firms in Johannesburg are on retainers with the big banks. So they've been basically bought by the big banks. If they don't do what the big banks say, then they're going to lose that very nice retainer, which is kind of, the major partners are doing very nicely, thank you very much. So it's all about me. This is the problem. Now, do you have a message for the big banks? I'm talking about ABSA and FNB.
100%. That is the problem with the attorney firms. If they could actually tell the big banks, we need to actually come clean now. This is the message that I want the big banks to actually realize. Stop this corruption in South Africa. Stop stealing properties. If you have a problem with your client, pick up the phone. Don't be scared and say, invite them into the office for a cup of coffee. Talk about the complaints. This is now the big bosses at the banks. I would like to actually see that now. I would like to see the media actually get the public going into the banks, having a cup of coffee and broadcasting it live around the world about their complaints. And let's see how the banks can actually resolve it. Because if they can start doing that, then that's a new South Africa changing, that the banks have decided we have lost the war with the public of South Africa. We are now going to come clean, and we're going to stop doing dirty business, and we're going to change this whole country of South Africa. Because I'm telling you, once they do that, Mr. Ramaphosa and the ANC, the government will change. I can tell you this now, once it starts with the banks, once that changes, this government will change. I can tell you now, and you will have a president doing what he said he's going to do, and this whole country will be 100% A-OK.
Yeah.
So the best thing is about the banks is that's what I want to see. I would like the fiduciary department, FNB fiduciary, to actually say, Mr. C, we realize you're going to the media. Let's actually deal this matter out of court. You can't deal with the matter out of court. You can deal some of it out of court, but at the end of the day, you're going to still have to go to court and explain to the judge why you did this. Then the judge will decide what I'm going to do with that person.
Yeah. Look, I think the problem with the banks is that they are, and I'm not just talking about the South African banks, but generally, the big banks are a criminal mafia. You know, they basically they have these cushy little ads. I actually put one out at the very start where they, you want to succeed in life. Well, you come to this bank, and behind the scenes, it's a very, very different situation. That's sadly what the truth is.
I would like to add to that, Scott, is that ad actually shows the infilism of ABSA. If ABSA looks at that ad now, they're going to realize after this live stream, looking at that ad, we are not that bank anymore. They must turn around tomorrow morning and say, we want to be that bank because of Mr. Seed, actually making us think that we must be that bank again. Because once they are back that bank, I'm telling you now, this case will be a breeze in court. And everybody that's lost their houses, yes, there's going to be a ton of them, I'm sure, after this live stream, going to knock on their door and say, you've stolen my house.
Yeah.
Then it's fine. The bank must actually invite them in for a cup of coffee and say, okay, what happened? Let's go through it, and then let's work together so we don't have to go to court. Because that's what I would have liked to have done with FNB in this case, especially ABSA. But no, the only way to go through this was to court. I mean, look, I was forced by SIU and the MPA to take this matter to court. Look, it was going to court either way. It was just that I was hoping it would be settled out of court. Now that I basically... I have no option to just go to court, but the court has decided not just FNB coming to court. They want ABSA, they want Slipknots, which that doesn't exist. Adrian Bernardus, Ordendale's on the run. Mr. Steele, they know where he is. The sixth respondent, they don't know what's going on. Miss Mafine in court, and obviously all the conveyances that can be found to come into court to testify with evidence. Because, it's not about getting the property back. It's about getting justice and evidence. It's not about justice. It's just providing the evidence to court to say exactly what happened. At the end of the day, they have to give me the property back because I don't have any assets in my name. I don't have any shares of my parents. I have nothing. So, once I've got that back, I will be very happy because that's what I want. I want the property back so that I can build my studio, and then I can actually get the legacy of my father's book out that I actually want to get someone to actually draw up and get published called The Seed Family Home, or The Mystery Seed Family Home, what happened for me to get this property back 20 years later. And I think, with my dad's history that I will get from BAT whenever they get it going and teletrack of that interview, I would like to get that into the book as well because of the legacy of my father. Because that's my father's home and I'm his child.
Yeah.
And I'm the youngest out of all my brothers. It's only the one brother that's alive still, that's Edward. The others have passed away, sadly. And I just hope that the court proceedings are going to be a breeze now, because now we're into trial. We've now passed motion of court application. We've actually passed civil trial and criminal trial and all that. We're now into locatory trial, but we are now done all the pre-trials now. So now we're going to be physical in court to now provide the evidence. I've done all the evidence, so I don't have to do anything. I just have to testify in court and have all these attorneys and advocates gunning me while I'm on the witness stand, which I have no problem. And the media has been invited. I think SABC Newsroom will be there in court next week, Thursday. It's open court, so the public is welcome to be in court. So for those who would like to come to the court proceedings, please send me a message on my Facebook page so I can keep you updated, because things are up and down at the moment because of load shedding. But I was told this morning that it's open courts next week, Thursday, for my case to be heard in court.
Right, okay. Look, thank you so much for joining us tonight,
I really appreciate
Richard.
it.
And for those people who are watching now and who will be watching this video later, if you believe that you've been frauded by the big banks in South Africa, we've now had 4 live streams about this whole thing. And there's clearly, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's no question about that. So if you feel you're a victim of the big banks, please contact me, and we'll put your story out there too. Okay, Richard, take care and have a great evening. And
I would use Scott. Yes, and I just would like to end off. And Scott, if there's anybody that would like to ask questions on your next show and you would like to invite me as a guest, by all means. And if you would like to follow up with the court proceedings, I'm available anytime, because I think this is very important. My court case gets the word out there and what the outcome is going to be in the end.
Right. Look, what we'll do is after your court case, if you can speak to Marlena, because we are fully booked with live streams right up into March. We've got so many people who want to talk. But anyway, so look, look, I'd love to do a follow-up with you. And that's the bottom line. All right, mate, take care.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too, Scott. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Take care.
And good luck with next week.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye for now.
Cheers. Okay, bye.
All right, guys, that was Richard Seed, and well, you heard it from the horse's mouth. I just can't get over the fact that you've got a title deed to a property, and it means nothing. Someone can steal your property off you, and you can be evicted. That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. But there you go. You've seen it. I'm going to wrap up this live stream now, and don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we will have another live stream. And if you want to see what live streams we've got lined up for this week, which includes Dr. Philippe and his latest blood slides, and you know what we're talking about there, that's happening on Friday night, this Friday night. And apparently, the longer you've had the jab, the more damage that's been done to your blood. You just don't know it's been done. And that's what's going to come out on Friday night. We'll be having a look at that. All right, I'm going to go out with Hier Bly Ek Boer. Have a great evening, and see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time. Bye for now.
Meer as 61,000 van ons voorvaders het op die grens vir ons gesterwe, sodat ons vry kan wees. Die is my land, die is my reg. Hier is ek boer. Stop is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer, soos die grond op die aarde. Hier bly ek boer. Soos 'n diep in die nag sal die vyand kom, maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voer. Hier bly ek boer. Soos 'n blaadsam in die somer wat vreugde bring, my oupa wat maniekie roe kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande. Hier was hy boer. My wortels lê diep in die grond geplant, Jy seun soos my pa, los ek vir jou die land, en jy hoef nie te vrees nie, hier sal jy boer. Die is my land, waarvoor ek sal veg, die is my bloed, my zweet, my rug, die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef, die is my land, hoe wat ek jou sê, die is my land, wat my mense voer, hier bly ek voor. Die leeuw sal kom, 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 die leeuw sal kom.